to another episode of Rupert and Pinchy. Good morning, Pinchy.
Good morning, Rupert. Today is
Good
episode
morning.
7, and I'm excited. So are you,
Yeah, I'm
I
very
think.
excited. Yeah, how excited am I? How excited? You said I look tired, but
I didn't say you look tired.
you said I look old or something. What did you say?
You do, but I didn't say that. Oh, wait, I just did. Alright,
Okay. Hey, good morning,
good morning.
and welcome everybody. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us today. Like Pinchy said, this is episode 7, and we're going to try to be spot on
And
and move
succinct.
swiftly and succinct. Um, and not that anyone's complained about it, but when we review our videos, we're like, gosh, I just went too long on that. I should have got to the point quicker. So,
That's how I feel
but
right now.
okay. Well,
Just kidding.
so thank you for joining us. Definitely appreciate you. Today we're going to be talking about a subject that all of us know something about, unless we are living
Somewhere.
on Venus or Jupiter.
Yes.
And even then, if you have a computer terminal, you know something about it. And so we're going to be discussing the subject of climate change. But we're using climate change to express some ideas about discernment or how to analyze data and some of the pitfalls and some of the things that we could do to make the best decisions in our life regarding what it is. So in order to do that, we are going to quote a lot of statistics,
Yep.
and as you know, statistics never lie, Pinchy,
But liars quote statistics.
all the time, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So now there's a corollary to that, and actually one presented by the experts. It says experts say statistics
Sorry, I'm pulling up our notes.
never. Oh, okay. You're pulling up notes. Okay. So the experts say statistics never lie, and they also say experts never lie. Okay. Well,
Not
that's not true.
true.
Now, so on that saying that statistics never lie, but liars always quote statistics. The data is what the data is, right?
Yep. They're
And
numbers.
right, and not obviously not all experts or scientists or lay people like you and I, not all of us are liars. Sometimes we may get the data wrong,
Yeah.
you know,
We
and we may get it.
don't analyze it correctly or just
Yeah, we don't
misunderstand it.
analyze it correctly, right? Or we don't question it enough because we first look at the information, we go, oh wow, that supports my preconceived
Yep.
idea of what is true, and so so we're going to be quoting a lot of statistics, and then basically we're not going to be answering. We're going to present some ideas to you, but the conclusions are yours to make.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we'll we will share what our conclusions are about it. But so whenever you're gathering data for any purpose, and everybody does it, whether you're a homemaker, a plumber, a doctor, a lawyer, a professor, an electrician, a farmer, everyone is gathering data to make a decision about something to take
Yep.
some action. You know, the mother and father at home, hey, how many eggs do we have for tomorrow? And they look at the fridge, oh, I got a dozen. Okay. And so then they go to the store and they get bacon and they get bread. And then the next morning they open up the egg carton. And yeah, there's 12 eggs, but 8 of them are damaged. So they didn't really verify the stats or really look to see, yeah, I've got a dozen eggs.
Yeah, make sure.
But, but so that's a very simple example. Another example about looking at data and analyzing the data properly so that you get the correct picture would be if I was a manager, for example, or a supervisor of a team of 10 people that had a job to produce a certain number of widgets or processes per day for the company or for the business that we work for. And so let's say so I have 10 people, I'm their supervisor, and we are required to do 400 widgets to have a successful company per day. And so you would analyze it and break that down. Like, okay, each person has to produce roughly about 40 widgets per day, and we'll stay on target. Okay, so people vary in their abilities, but this team of 10 people are about the same ability, and you might expect them to, be 38 to 42, but everybody doing their part. Well, after a review of the production of each individual, I find out there's one person that's doing 80, and then I find out there's a few people doing quite a bit less than 40, like 35, and then there's even one guy that's only doing 30 a day. And so my first inclination would be, if that's the only analysis, or if that's the only data I have, and I don't do any further analysis, I'm going to think that that person that's doing 80 a day is really amazing and deserves a lot of credit. And then I'm going to think that some of those people on the lower end of production aren't doing their job, perhaps, or not as good as doing their job. And you could maybe go into initially thinking that, but then you find out, you do a further analysis. You find out that, in fact, the person that's doing 80 is just going too fast and not producing the widgets properly. And then all the other 9 people have to spend their time fixing that person the quality. So that's one thing. And that's not to say that the person that's producing 80 widgets a day is doing it on purpose or doesn't have good intent. Maybe he or she just feels like they want to do the best for the team, and so anyway,
they meant well.
They meant well. They're sincere, but and then the people that are doing less, or everybody except that high productive person, is taking time out of their schedule to fix those things. And so then I look at the person that's doing the lowest, and I find out, well, in fact, everything that person's doing is really well done and doesn't ever have to be touched. And so I might think, well, okay, I've got a problem here. And if I don't analyze that data correctly, I will make determinations on reward for the employees incorrectly. That will create problems on the team, because generally on a team of production, everybody kind of knows what everybody's doing, even more than the manager sometimes. And so if I'm rewarding the wrong people, I'm subverting loyalty and from the other members of the team, and then also I'm letting that team member down that's not doing it right by not correcting him or her, or helping them become successful. And then on top of that, maybe the company itself has the wrong idea of what a person can do per day, and maybe if they want 400 items per day done, 10 people are not enough. So all those things, by not looking at the data properly, I'm not going to affect it and fully. And to the extent that I can, I'm not going to be a fully effective team. I'm not going to be a benefit to my company, and I'm definitely not going to be a benefit to the customers. So it's really important how you look at data.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, like what we were saying in the beginning, is that we're going to discuss global warming, or climate change from maybe a unique viewpoint that you haven't considered before, and like we said in the beginning, that unless you live on Venus or under a rock or something, you've come across the idea of climate change.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, if I'm out buying tennis shoes, I'll look on the box and it'll say these were made from products that are natural and help fight global warming. If I buy candy, if I go buy a lawnmower, if I go get a haircut, the barber will say, I appreciate what you're doing. What do you mean? By cutting your hair more often, you're helping fight climate change. I'm like, what? I mean, it's everywhere, right?
Yeah, and that's why we want to verify with statistics that it's everywhere, really.
Well, and then we want to look like, well, why is it everywhere? But
Right, yeah,
uh,
absolutely.
now, now we start by questioning our first proposition that we think it's everywhere. Okay, well, we think it's just ubiquitous. It's hammering us from every place. So then we thought, well, how could we determine if it is as ubiquitous, if
Right.
it's as you know,
Well, how do we
around
verify
this?
that we're not biased because we look at the news, we look at the politics, and that's kind of our world to some degree,
Right,
and we're
right, yeah,
absorbing that all the time. So,
yeah. So how do we verify that? To make sure that we're not being biased. So what did we come up with?
well, you look on Google and you see how many articles there are. At least that's what we did. Especially, you want to look at the total, and then you want to look at climate change or global warming to make a comparison. Like, there are a lot of articles just in general. Let's see how many are related to
Right.
climate change and all that, right? And
Well, so
also,
so
then
go ahead.
the third thing that you want to look at is other topics as well. How prevalent are these topics alongside climate change or other things? Just to get
Right.
a sample of what is most prevalent in these articles, what is most talked about. Not
Hmm.
necessarily in the public square, but just the people that are writing the articles. How often or how much do they have to say about climate change, right?
So what you said is about total articles, and that's again just driving them. We're going to quote a lot of statistics here, and the purpose of it is we want to ascertain: does this show? We believe it shows a certain amount of interest, or importance from those providing the
Yeah,
information,
absolutely.
right? And this can give us a picture of that.
Yeah, it's
So
not the full picture. It's like a precursor of looking at that data and making sure that we want to make sure that we're representing the data correctly. And the data might not prove anything. It might just be like give you an idea of the truth of the
yeah,
facts.
and actually, we're just going to suggest some things, but the conclusions are yours to make,
Right? Yeah.
right? But
Absolutely.
so the first number you were talking about is the number of articles. You mean like all articles, not just climate change, right?
Well, if you look up news at least on Google and then you go to
That's what we're
news
talking
articles,
about.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
So what? Go
you
ahead.
can't just look up blank. So you have to look up news. So it might vary depending on whether or not it says news or whatever. However, they determine that number. So do you want me to look through those
Yeah.
numbers?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you look up news on Google News, you get the total number of news articles, which is uh, 2,780,000,000. That's the rough estimate, rough number. And then we looked at climate change, which is 246 million. And you can look up global warming as well, and you get another number that's not as big, but um, and so do you want me to
So
go through the
roughly,
list?
so roughly, just to start, climate change. Almost of all articles that are posted on Google, all news articles are pretty close to 10% of all news articles have some relation to climate
Yeah,
change. Yeah. Go
absolutely.
ahead.
And I also want
So
to
what?
clarify something.
What is
Is
that?
these numbers change all the time?
Hmm.
So if you look these up, you might say, "Well, you're inaccurate." It's like, when we got these numbers, they were accurate. So,
Well,
um,
and the change doesn't really change the trend.
right, yeah,
So maybe it goes from 246 million to 240 million.
right,
Well, that little percentage, that's like half of a percent. It doesn't affect the point that we're trying to make.
yeah, absolutely.
So then what are the so then you looked up other news
Yeah, you
articles
want
and
to look
stuff.
up, you want to get a sample of what people are interested in, or what articles are interested in at least. So we have crime, which is 432 million articles.
Mhm.
Um, and then you have number 2 on our list, 358 million I mean, that's quite a bit.
What's
And
the next one?
oh, the next one, you mean sexuality? That one? Or
Yeah, yeah. Did you say sexual?
I thought I did.
That we just. Oh, I didn't hear it, but
Sexuality, which is
I don't usually listen
358
to you
million.
anyway.
I know that.
Okay.
And then we just have climate change written down again because it's the number 3 number. And then we have religion, which is 215 million, which apparently is less important than climate change, at least by article writers. Then we have racism, which is 89,500,000. Then we have lawnmowers, which are really important, 92,200. I mean, that's a number. It's not like in the millions or anything. And then we have candy, which, I mean, everyone needs candy, so 49 million.
And everybody's interested in writing a story about it, apparently. So.
Especially around Halloween, I guess. Whatever.
So then, when we look up these numbers, there's a lot of overlap. So if I looked up every article and gave
Right.
Under the subject, and I added them up, it would probably add up more than that 2,780,000. But that's because there's overlap between the different stories.
Yeah, one
So-
thing might be about two things, you know.
Right, or 3 things or 5 things. So the numbers, that number, what we're interested in is looking at the total number of articles that Google says is on its site, and then the number on the individual subjects. And then we also did something else. What did we do?
Yeah, you know, when you look at the data, we also wanted to look at when you add up climate change and these other subjects to see how many or how much these articles speak about both subjects, you know? See how much, because there can be overlap, and so that's kind of what we wanted to look at. So we have another set of numbers that is adding these, not adding these. We looked up these topics together. So
Okay, so before you go to those, let's mention the fact that on those items, the crime, sexuality, religion, racism, you have the list better there, the current list. It's important to realize that articles about crime and articles about sexuality and articles about racism and even articles about lawnmowers have been around a long time.
right, yeah, they vary in
Right.
In interest
And you
for
did some-
length of periods of time.
Right, so there's articles on Google that may have been written in 1910 that someone
Yeah.
decided that they're interested. But there was no articles on climate change in 1910. If there were, there might have been 2.
Right, yeah.
Okay? But where you did a little research on that and you found that it was fairly recent.
Yeah, around 30 years.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly. They basically said that it started becoming main headlines 30 years ago, which is, I mean, that's when it started becoming more interesting to people, or at least article writers.
And someone else had more interest in writing about it. So, and so, again, considering that example of the guy that's producing 80 compared to the guy that's producing 30, when we look at these figures, we might think, well, still, see, climate change is still not as important as crime and the other things. It's like, well, hold on.
Yeah,
That initial analysis of that is true.
yeah,
But then you have to think, yeah, but climate change hasn't been around
right,
and talked about as long,
Right,
and yet
yeah.
it's almost as high as the highest concern. Okay, go ahead.
yeah. Well, absolutely. It gives us an idea that maybe there's something here about it starting to become more prevalent, and so you want to also take that into consideration. So I have a set of numbers here, which is just adding the subject plus climate change. So start from the top. Crime, 36,900,000. Sexuality, 400.
So what that means is what?
What?
That climate change and crime have 39 million
36.
articles. Oh, 36 million articles that they're being connected in some manner.
Yeah, in some manner. Yeah.
Okay.
And it might not be exact because I've seen articles that have nothing to do with the subject when I look at it, but you know.
Right.
And then we have sexuality, which is 477,000. articles that is the subject plus climate change. And then we have religion, 6,650,000. And then we have racism, which is 3,400,000. And then lawnmowers, there's articles on that when it comes to climate change, apparently.
Right.
6,760. You know, not that, not a ton, but 255,000 for candy.
Candy and climate change.
Yeah.
255,000.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh.
they're totally correlated and are totally linked together.
Yeah.
And then you
And
had
these-
a couple of things that you added as well to the list.
Well, so those are just what was that 5? 5 items?
Crime,
6 items?
sexuality, religion, racism, lawnmowers, candy. I believe that's 6. Wait,
Okay, yeah.
yeah, 6.
So 6 subjects. You could throw tennis shoes and climate change and see what number you get up. You're going to come up with a number
with something.
because it is definitely involved. Yeah. So I thought, well, let's pull. I just decided to throw a crazy combination together. So I put Rupert and climate change together, and I got 110,000 hits on news articles.
Yeah, you're more important than lawnmowers when it comes to climate change.
A lot more important. I think actually they're trying to. Anyway, so then I looked up Pinchy and climate change, and he's also more important than lawnmowers. But anyway, there were 16,600 articles, and so just put in smiles and climate change.
Friction.
There's probably the friction. There's probably going to be an article that, and this I'm just throwing out there as, there's probably going to be an article that says people are smiling less because of the fear of climate change.
Something like that.
You think I'm crazy? You think I'm mocking? Okay.
You kind of
You
are.
might be. You might be right about both of those things. I might be crazy and I might be mocking. And I won't be offended.
But that doesn't mean you're not right.
Right. And so anyway, so those figures tell us that there's a huge interest in it. And
Yeah, it's number
It's
3 on our list. More
Yeah.
important than religion and racism, which, honestly
Yeah.
is surprising to me.
right. So the numbers show that there's a real big interest, and it's being pushed or talked about from every angle.
Yeah,
from
absolutely.
From tennis shoes to Smile to gasoline to racism.
Yeah.
Okay,
And that's
so,
the thing you got to consider when looking at these statistics. They're not
Right.
all from the same point of view necessarily.
Right, and so to offer up a clarification or what would be the term to
An analysis of the data, if you were to look at it at different angles.
Well, no, a qualifier.
Okay, yeah.
We want to be open right now, and just and people maybe have already guessed it, but there's 2 camps on this climate change discussion.
Yeah.
And one of them is that, and we're talking about this. We're gonna want it to identify it and let you know what side we come on clearly, and then continue on. One side believes that there's climate change caused by man-made. It's man-made, and it's gonna wreck the world. And if we don't do something, we're all gonna die because of man-made global warming. The other side believes that there may be warming or cooling, but that it is not man-made, and that it is cyclical, and that there's not a lot that we can do about it.
Right, yeah.
Okay, those are the 2 sides.
Yeah.
And Pinchy and I believe that global climate change is a natural cyclical cycle.
Yep.
And man has absolutely almost I don't want
Little
to
to
say
no effect.
little to no effect.
Yeah.
And so, and that there's nothing that can really be done to fight it.
Right, that it's beyond our control.
And we've come to this conclusion not because we had a bias to begin with.
Right.
We looked at both sides of the argument, and
Couple
we're not going
times.
to go, huh?
Multiple times by now.
Multiple times, yeah. We're not going to. We didn't read the 246 million articles, right?
No, no.
Right.
No.
So if we had to read 246 million articles before we made any decision in our life, we would never have left our mother's womb.
Right.
Right.
That's the thing about
So-
the internet is you could spend your entire life just looking at one thing.
Right, right, and but we want to touch on a couple reasons why that maybe we came to this conclusion, and besides just recognizing our just from our natural observation, so we wanted to see, well, what did this person say that is the climate alarmist? What view do they have, and what data do they provide?
Yep.
And then we wanted to look at, well, the person that doesn't believe that we should be worried about man-made global warming, the non-climate alarmist. What did they say?
Right.
And so one of the things I'll share. One of the things that I read is that first of all, with CO2, and you probably will take this up as one of your things.
Yeah.
Carbon dioxide. That on the side of the people that believe climate change is cyclical and there's nothing we can do about it, they said, okay, so we've analyzed everything that man can capably do in order to affect
Or mitigate.
or mitigate carbon dioxide release or increase, either way. And they determined that volcanic action alleviates any change immediately. A major volcanic eruption will release so much CO2 into the air that any reduction in CO2 done by human effort is totally flipped or canceled out by
Right.
one belch.
You don't mean eruption, you mean just
Just a belch.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a belch of gases.
yeah.
And on top of that, then you have to look and go like, so then I searched, well, how many active volcanoes
Are there?
are there on the planet at this time? And right there, I believe I found 46.
Yeah.
Again, from Google, but 46 active volcanoes. Now, when they describe what an active volcano is, they says 30 minutes or less of activity continuously. So you have a belch, it stops for a while, and then it belches again. It has to do that every 30 minutes or less in order for it to be called an active volcano. So there's a lot of other volcanoes out there that will belch a big belch of CO2 on Monday, but not do it until Saturday.
Right.
So they're not even counting those. And then we're not even counting the ones on the seafloor. So that was one of them for me. Is there something for you that triggered?
Well, there's other things. I don't have anything on my mind because I
Right
haven't
off
been
the
reading the
top?
articles. No,
Okay.
not really.
Well, yeah, and so we've done reading. We've
Yeah.
listened to both arguments.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we found that the arguments that are on the non-climate alarmist side are much more logically reasoned out.
And convincing.
They're much more and convincing, and they're more sound, and they're more logical.
Yeah.
They're more observable from just our natural viewpoint as an individual, and their data is provided.
Yeah.
And when you look into the data, you find out their data is actually accurate.
Yeah, and we could make an entire video on evidence against climate change or for climate change, whatever. But that's why we want to say that we're not really going about it the same way that we could go about it. But we want to talk about discernment.
Right.
Yeah, more like analyzing just the prevalence of these ideas and the promotion of them.
Mm-hmm. Right. So yeah, we're not doing a scientific research, although we read articles about, science on it. There's 246 million articles on climate change.
Right.
Pinchy and I didn't just split up those articles and say, hey, you read 120, 5 million or 27 million articles, and I'll read the other, and then
Right.
it's make a no.
Yeah, we
So
don't
we
necessarily know the ratio of pro or con articles about it,
right.
pro or
Well,
against.
and so then someone will say, well, why are you concerned about it? Well, first of all, the first thing we want to do is show from statistics gathered by um, a supposed neutral party, Google, for Google News, on how many articles we showed that there's a huge influx of pressure from news articles for people to be aware of climate change. Anytime you watch a TV, a commercial, a news show, it's going to mention climate change almost on a daily basis.
Yep.
And so we kind of established that by looking at just the numbers of that.
Right.
And then we presented that there might be two sides to that issue. And the main concern that we have is, okay, whether you're a climate alarmist or not a climate alarmist, the actions that people want to take because of whatever view they have is our concern. Right?
Yeah.
It's maybe there's climate change man-made and maybe there's not. You know, what is being proposed to fight or mitigate that climate change, and is it in proportion? Is it proportion to the threat,
Right.
and does it have any effect?
Well, before
And
we go there,
right
we
before we
should-
go there, but
yeah.
go ahead.
Well, we should also talk about the democracy of ideas, like we talked about before. Before we
Right.
move on.
Well, yeah. I just want to let you know that uh, that it's just not a matter of fighting about being right
Right.
on whether there's global warming or not. We're concerned about the reason it's even a concern
Right.
to us is because what's being done.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
let's go, like you said, let's go back to the numbers. So there's 246 million articles. Now, let's suppose that Pinchy and I read all those articles and we calculated out that 10% of the articles believe that they were on the side of that climate alarmism is not true. They felt that it was a natural cycle. And 90% of the articles felt that or proposed that climate change is caused by man. It is an existential threat, and we can do something about it. So 90% believe in climate change, alarmism, and 10% don't. So if we just simply went, well, you know what? Let's just take a vote. Who's for climate change and who's against climate change? Um, that wouldn't be a real good way to decide whether you're going to
Right.
do something or take a certain position simply on a democratic
Vote.
majority rule.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it can tell you something about the information if a lot of people agree, but it doesn't necessarily prove anything. You know.
Right. It makes your awareness. It's like, oh, okay, a lot of people are concerned about this. Maybe I should look into this. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so, but don't make sure that doesn't just sway you just because people say that they believe that it's true versus not, and that more people agree with you. It's like science isn't based on democratic vote. I mean,
Right.
but it can tell you something about that, and I just want to make sure you understand that. But it doesn't tell you everything. It's a number. It's not. It doesn't give you the whole story. Why do they believe that? Who are these people that believe that? And is there anything that they can gain from it? You know, there's a lot of questions that you have to ask about where the data is coming from or who is proposing it.
Right. And so, and then on the flip side, so let's say we read the articles, and 90% of the articles said climate change is simply a normal cyclical process, undeterred or unaffected by man's activities, and 10% are the side of climate alarmism. Just because we believe that it's a normal cyclical event, we're not going to take that and go like, well, it's settled.
Right, yeah,
90%,
absolutely.
90% agree with us, so it's settled. You guys are wrong. No, we look at the data. If it doesn't make sense, we don't want to agree with it.
Right, absolutely. Like, somebody could say, well, you're just saying that now, because you disagree with the evidence that of it. And I mean, you can say that all you want, but that doesn't make it true.
Right.
We try and look at things logically and reasonably if we can,
Right. Well, and so, you got the 90% for, 10 against. So that doesn't really. We're not going to use voting either way, even
Right.
when it's for our benefit or on our viewpoint or on the other side. There's a certain reality that the more something is repeated, the more likely it's going to be believed. That's the basics of sales.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
If you advertise your product, it's going to be heard. But what Pinchy and I do not ever want to be, we never want to be reduced down to Pavlov's dog. Do you know Pavlov's dog, Pinchy?
No, I'm not familiar
You're
with
not
that.
familiar with that?
No.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
So Pavlov did a study and he was understanding or investigating behavior, and he used dogs, and he would ring a bell and feed the dog.
Oh yeah, I've heard of this one.
Ring a bell and feed the dog, and he did that a lot of times. And then eventually he quit feeding the dog, and he would ring the bell, and the saliva would start to run for the dog because he or she was trained. They're she dogs, right? How many dog genders are there? I think there's only two. Anyway, so he'd ring the bell, saliva would come because he's expecting food.
Yeah.
He's been trained that food is coming. So you and I do not want to be simply Pavlov's dog, where we are bombarded with information, and then we're just going to act accordingly.
Go with it. Yeah.
Yeah, we're not, and nor do we want anyone else to be, regardless of which viewpoint you have.
Right. Analyze the data based on its quality, not just by its quantity. Like we said before, the quantity 80 could tell you something. If somebody's making 80 widgets, it's like, maybe that's telling us something. Maybe they're doing a great job. But maybe if you look at the quality, it might not be what you think it is.
What you think.
Right,
Yeah.
and so 90% of the articles could be pro-climatism or climate change alarmism, and you can't just say, well, based on the number, it must be true. It's like, look at the quality and the quantity. Maybe there's something there.
Right, and so
Argue against a logic based on its merits, not on its...
and on its merits. Yeah. Not on its ideology.
Ideology? Not on its ideology. What do you mean?
I'll go. That's a different subject. Okay. So we looked at 90%, 10%, 10%, 9%. Well, let's go this way. So now we're talking about some ways or some nuances to make determinations or to help judgment and discernment. So let's say Pinchy and I looked at the data, and it was like 50-50. 50 articles were written.
50 articles.
50 articles. 50% of the articles were written, supporting climate alarmism. 50% of the articles were denying climate alarmism. Okay? And let's just say, this is just, a thought experiment. Let's just say that both sides had decent arguments.
Yeah.
Okay? So then Pinchy and I are trying to decide, oh, gosh, what side of this argument are we going to be on? Right? Supposing that we should make a decision on it. that it does affect us. And later on, perhaps in the show, we'll talk about why it does affect us, that it is important for us to make a decision which side we're going to be on.
Yeah.
But anyway, so let's suppose that Pinchy and I are trying to figure out, okay, what do we think? And we're like, okay, the data and everything
It's 50-50.
are one way, 50-50. Okay, well, could we look at the main people that are pushing for one side or the other?
Right.
Could we make a determination that we could maybe look to some assistance and some guidance that perhaps if this person believes in this, and I've looked at everything else and I can't decide, maybe that's what I got to go with.
Right.
Right? Sometimes we make decisions in life like that. We've analyzed it properly. We've done all our homework and research. And then sometimes it comes down to, well, this person is for it. I've always trusted this person and I'm going to go with it. I could be wrong, but sometimes it just comes down to that.
Right.
Right?
And you don't always want to make that your determination.
That's not the rule.
Right.
That's not the rule.
Right. You end up getting to that point, and it might give you evidence. But
Yeah, it might help you.
right, but all of this is adding together to be able to discern. Is you don't discern just by one set of information. You base it on other information that you have. Otherwise, you can't make a decision.
Right. Or an informed decision.
Right,
You
yeah.
can make a decision, but
But it's not a good
yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Not necessarily.
Let everything be confirmed in the mouth of two or three witnesses is an old proverb. So then you might look at, okay, I wonder what the main proponents are of this, and so we may look at, okay, what is
What?
Nancy Pelosi say about global warming?
Right. Yeah.
What does Joe Biden? Not that she's a scientist, but what is she pushing? What is Joe Biden pushing? What is academic professors pushing?
Yeah.
What are all these? What are our religious leaders pushing?
Yep.
And we go like, well, do you mean that if those leaders are pushing for that, you're going to go for it? It's like, no, we're not there at that point
No.
yet.
No.
That's global warming. We then will look at other subjects that we feel are very important and see how they decided on that. So we might go, well, what was their view on abortion?
Right.
Right?
Right. And we look at other things to make a determination sometimes. You don't necessarily just look at the same subject. It's like, are they wrong with this, 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 this? If they're wrong with 9 out of 10 things, how can I necessarily trust what they say about climate change,
Right.
Like we said, this doesn't necessarily prove anything. It's just, it puts the question in your mind. If they're wrong about this, why would I trust them on this?
It can help give a clarity to the analysis of the data that you're looking
absolutely.
at. And so when we say abortion, though, someone will say, well, that's really a stupid thing to judge on. It's like, no, you're not understanding when I say abortion. I'm saying, first of all, abortion, if depending upon which side of that you're on,
Yeah.
we are anti-abortion. We're anti-child murder. So the reason we're that way is because we believe that the baby inside a woman is a human.
Yeah, and it has value.
Okay, and has value. Now, the people that are pro-abortion might say, well, we agree it's a baby. Okay. Then we go to the next step. We, on the side of being against baby murder, believe that it is a baby and it is wrong, morally wrong, to kill that baby, murder that baby. And then the other side will say, well, we think we have the choice. So right there is a disconnect of perhaps what we may feel is reality.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
So if you are denying something that is fundamental to how we perceive reality, then how can we trust you on other items of reality?
Well, yeah, and abortion is specifically an important one when it comes to climate change for the simple reason they don't they deny a baby their fundamental rights.
Mm-hmm.
And I should trust them over all of humanity and all of humanity's assets. It's like,
Right.
that's kind of questionable. Why would I trust
Right.
the person that can't discern one
The
light?
simplest, yeah.
And so, how can I trust them over all of humanity? Because that's really what they propose to do. If you look at what they say, you got to.
Right.
Everyone has to mitigate
Yeah.
the CO2 in the air. And how do you do that?
If they can't answer that question about abortion, which your typical 5-year-old, if you asked them, what's inside mommy's womb? A baby. Is it okay? Would it be okay to kill that baby? No, they'd be horrified. Their faces.
I mean, if they
some of them
understand
might
what that
start crying.
means, but you know,
Yeah, they would be horrified. That's a 5-year-old. They can figure that out.
yeah,
So it's not rock. We're not really setting the bar that real high. We're not asking our leaders whether or not they have a degree in physics or quantum mechanics. We're just saying, will you deny this reality?
Right.
So the next reality we might go to is like gender,
Yeah.
gender ideology.
Can
We
it
might
change,
go-
and is it based in biology?
Yeah. How many genders are there? Are they permanently decided at birth? And can you define a woman and a man?
Yeah.
Matt Walsh has had a movie out, what is a woman? Where he went around and no one would answer that.
Yeah.
It's not that they couldn't. Some of them maybe couldn't. But they knew that if they did that, their whole, if they answered correctly, their whole argument would fall apart.
Right, yeah.
So anyway.
But even the scientists, even scientists
Go ahead.
should know the difference between man and woman, or that a baby is a baby. I mean, especially scientists, because they have more knowledge about these things than the average person. And if you look at it, it should verify time and time again the reality that men and women are distinct, distinct sexes of the human race, and that that babies are members of the human race. It's like these are things that, if you go in depth and do a scientific study of these things, I think you should be even more convinced that babies are babies and that men and women are men and women.
Yeah, right. And so then you go like, okay, so can they determine that? And to us, it's like, this is like a 2 + 2 = 4 question.
Right.
If I had some religious leader or political leader or professor, and I asked them a question that to me is like a 2 + 2. Okay, Mr. Expert or Mrs. Expert, 2 + 2 = 4. Is that a true statement? And they went, I can't answer that. That's subjective. I go, okay, thank you. Bail. Next question. So we go ahead. You had some thoughts.
Oh, I mean, there. To me, the fundamental problem with so many ideologies is that they don't accept reality as true, or what seems obvious to me. Maybe we could have arguments on entire subjects just because their ideas are either incoherent or just don't make sense. It's like that's what I feel like is so many issues, is it just doesn't seem like people are analyzing the data correctly, or they're just not being honest about it.
Well, sometimes to do the right thing is the harder thing to do.
It always is.
Reward. Yeah, it has. Well, it has. In some ways, it is. Some ways, it is. But it has more of a reward, obviously.
Right.
But anyway, so you look at what these leaders that you value. What are their perspectives on other issues that matter to you?
Yeah.
And we're not talking about some multiple purity spirals where we're going to ask them what's their favorite ice cream, and if they're wrong about that, or who do they think is the best rock band. We're not going to argue about those. Are preferences. We're talking about fundamental issues.
Oh, right.
And
Yeah,
when
I just wanted to point out something about logical arguments. If you analyze how logic arguments are formed, it's based on premises that most people would agree with.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can agree with those things, then maybe you would agree with the end result or the conclusion. And so
Mm-hmm.
we're reaching a point where we don't even agree on the fundamentals, you know, on the simple premises. And so that's where our arguments just don't make sense to people. It's like you're not even accepting the common sense premises that we're laying out, or
Right.
seemingly in our minds at least.
Right. Well, and you said fundamental. That's the fundamental principles. That's where it's really important. These are the building blocks for any rational,
Right? Yeah.
intellectual
Conversation.
process, thought, or activity. And if those are wrong, then the rest of the whole building is wrong.
Right. Absolutely.
The rest is questionable. So, it's these are fundamental questions, and so if I had a neighbor and I asked him, "Hey, you know, how many genders are there?" and he said, "Well, I think there's at least 35." I go, "Okay." And then the next day I was mowing my lawn, and I'd go like, and he and this neighbor owns a lawn service and does really excellent work. I go, "Hey, Jerry, what height should I set my height on my mower? 2 inches or 3 inches?" And let's say he said 3 inches. I go, "Okay." But like, I don't know if I can trust him. He doesn't even know how many genders there are, So he may be right on the height of the mower, but he's certainly wrong on the gender, in
But
my
it becomes
opinion.
questionable, like
It
when
throws everything into question.
right, yeah, absolutely. The person that flies a plane, if they can't drive a car, I don't know if I can trust them to fly the plane. Maybe it doesn't prove that they can't fly the plane, but it just raises the question, you can't drive a car. I don't know if you can drive this plane. I don't know if I can trust that.
So that is using those numbers for that purpose, like what we talked about. Who can we trust? Who is dealing in reality, and what are their viewpoints? We've already established that it's something that's being focused on and pushed. The information is being pushed to us in so many ways
Absolutely.
and constantly. So someone may say I don't care about global warming. I'm just going to do my job or whatever. And it's like, okay, I understand that attitude.
Yeah.
I mean, you just want to live your life. But you have to understand that's not the end of the story. They're not just wanting to
You
prove that
agree
there's
with them, yeah.
Yeah, they're not just wanting to prove the fact that global warming is happening. They have intentions on something to do,
Right, yeah, absolutely.
right? And so then you have to go like, okay, if somebody is pushing an idea or a product, I have to ask, well, who benefits from this idea or
Yeah.
product?
Is it me?
Is it me? Do I benefit from this? Yeah. And so you go like, and who loses from this? Okay. So then you have to look up, and that's just the old follow the money thing. Who's going to benefit from this?
Yeah.
So then you go like, okay, uh, who's investing in electric cars? Who's investing in electric batteries, for example? Who's investing in wind power or solar power?
Yeah.
And are these even viable?
Right.
And that you can study yourself and find out who is investing in these. And someone will say, well, investment is free. They should be able to invest in whatever they want. It's like, you're right.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
what
Yeah.
you're right, absolutely. But what happens when government is involved in saying that there will be no gasoline cars, fuel, diesel vehicles, everything will be electric? Then all of a sudden there's another party pushing or limiting the market, saying, "Go ahead, you had a thought."
Oh, it's the end justifies the means. Is they're saying that the end is we need to stop the world from ending, and how do we do that? We end the world. It's like, I mean, you look at what they want to do. They want to control the energy production, which is basically the lifeline for many countries nowadays. And then you want to say, what do they do about food? What do they do about shelter? What do they do about all these things? And it's like their means seem worse to me than the ends that they're trying to, or say that they are trying to get to.
Right. Well, they're in a sense, it seems, again, we want to follow and analyze things correctly.
Yeah.
In a sense, they're using they're declaring an emergency and using fear in order to sell a product.
Yep.
And you should always caution yourself and stop and look at it when somebody's saying you're going to die if you don't do this. You go, maybe they really care.
Yeah.
Maybe they want to really, try to save me and save the planet.
They seem like a good person.
Yeah, wow, they care. And so they're very caring. About what, I have no idea. But no, anyway. So you look at it, the sales program is they create a threat, they induce fear, and then they offer a solution.
Yeah.
That's a perfect sales. You need to have this
pitch.
special cream because it will remove, wrinkles.
Yeah.
Without this, you're going to be all wrinkled up. So,
Yeah, and that's why it's important, though, is because, you could say, put your hands up and say, you know what, I want to live my life. I'll go along with that. But then it comes to fruition, and you're like, wait, this is completely intruding on my life. And so your original intent just comes back to bite you. But if you had dealt with the problem in the first place, you wouldn't be in this position.
Right. So you have to analyze when someone's saying that this is an existential threat to you. You have to go like, well, you can ignore it, but you shouldn't, because there's people that have power that are going to do things to supposedly save the planet,
right,
or save humanity. And so you got to follow the money, and then you got to look at the intentions. Even when intentions, there are some people that believe in global climate alarmism. They really care. It is true that there are some that really care.
Well, like they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
But let's suggest one way. Let's suggest one way that we could ascertain whether or not their intentions are truly altruistic.
Yeah.
So, for example, there are so many leaders and wealthy people that have warned that the oceans are going to warm, and there's going to be flooding along the coastlines, and because of global warming. Where did a lot of these wealthy people and powerful people and former politicians purchase property? On the ocean front.
Yeah.
If they were really concerned that the ocean was going to flood the oceanfront areas, do you think they would spend millions of dollars on a property? So it starts to make you question, okay, well, I know they're selling this as a real danger, but why would they do the opposite then, seemingly? So there are things that we can look at to see, is there sincerity really based on a true sincerity, or is
look
it
at
just
the fruit and the indications of their...
or is it another sales gimmick?
Right.
Is it just another sales gimmick? Now, the best sales gimmick would be to, and I say gimmick, would be, okay, to advertise your product, then eliminate the competition, and then if you want to be super successful, why don't you have government involved with forcing people to purchase?
That's a good way of getting rid of competition.
That's a good way of getting rid of, and that's a good way of consolidating power and money. So, unless you have more pinching, these are some of the things that we just wanted to throw out there.
Yeah, this is mostly a podcast about questions, mostly.
Yeah, and for people to just ask a question, just ask, why would, I need to do that? If it's so important, ask those questions. You are capable of determining what is right and wrong. Or what is the right direction to
Yeah.
take, or make your best judgment.
Yeah, make your best
But-
judgment that you can.
Yeah, on the good information that you would receive, but do not settle for being Pavlov's dog. That simply because they ring the bell and bring the food, and ring the bell and bring the food, and ring the bell and bring the food, and then all of a sudden they ring the bell and they don't bring the food, but you still behave in the same way because you've been trained. I
That's
don't
the
wanna
problem
live
with
that
it.
I don't want to live that way.
Yeah.
Pinchy doesn't want to live that way, and we don't
hope
want
you don't
anybody
want you
to live that way. So, hopefully this has been beneficial for you. Things to consider. Like I said, we could go into so many other avenues on this subject, but we just
Absolutely.
wanted to throw out some ideas for you to consider. So, thanks for being with us. Thumbs up or thumbs down is appreciated, and like always, Godspeed.
Have a good day.
Okay, we'll see you, Pinchy.
See ya.